Through a Scottish Prism, the programme that is unapologetically pro-Scottish independence and anti-Westminster rule. Everything we say here is viewed through a Scottish prism. Brought to you by Barhead Boy.
Hi folks, and welcome back to Through a Scottish Prism. I hope you and yours are well. Now I know a couple of weeks ago we told you we were taking some time off because it was summer and things, events, dear boy, events as they say, got in touch with us, but today definitely we're going to take a couple of weeks after this because the real matter is my three youngest grandwains arrive tomorrow, and much as I love you all, I prefer spending time with them. And also with both parliaments closed down, it is going to be a bit quieter. However, caveat, if anything untoward comes up, we will be back. Don't worry about that. But in the meantime, let's get in the panel, starting with our favourite lawyer up there in Clickmannon. Eva, how are you? You're not in
I'm
Clickmannon.
great, Roddy, and guess what? We're not in Clickmannon because we're having a wee holiday. We're in Kirkcaldy this week, birthplace of Adam Smith, linoleum, and this week or this year in particular, famous for the cruelty that has emanated from the Victoria Hospital. And no doubt we'll speak about the heroics of Sandie Peggie later on today.
Oh, for sure. And anyway, holiday shouldn't start till after you finish your obligations. I didn't see a holiday request form, I've got to say. Whoops, I'll have to talk to Techie about that. And up in the City of Discovery, we have Mr. Petrie. How are you, Alan?
Hi, Roddy. We're doing well here. Not so good weather today, pouring down a rain, but I think the grass needs it.
That'll be good for the ground. Good for the ground. I know when we talk about weather, it just automatically triggers me, but I'm not allowed to say anything. Over there in Edinburgh, it's Mr. Quinnan.
Hi there, folks. How are you doing? Doing fine. It's absolutely chucking it down here as well, but there we go.
Oh, suddenly now you want to talk about the weather.
Aye, okay.
And we seek him here, we seek him there. Where is the Cavalier today?
Aye, south of France for me today. Back down visiting the friends I took down there. It was great. Just jumped down in the plane, surveyed 2 houses for them. They're looking to invest. So, as an old QS and building guy, I had a wee look around. I've still looked into the loft of one of them, maybe later today, to see what horrors await. See if I can sniff out the dry rot or whatever else is up there. So anyway, that's fun and games. I better put a jumpsuit on or something in boiling heat. It'll kill me, but worth a shot. Fun.
Great to have you, old chap. Great to have you. Eva, this week, as I say, things are winding down. However, a couple of things to wind us up. Now, as we know, for absolutely years, the good old National, the home magazine for the SNP is giving us all these fantastic headlines and these go back to 2020, by the way, about its imminent independence. One more mandate, another mandate, another mandate, another mandate, another. And then we had, of course, we after that we had Mike Russell's famous 11-point plan, which I'm sure you remember, Eva. And there must be an election looming because, lo and behold, there he is, our John, a new plan. But it's only 3 points, Eva. Were you excited? Were you enthused? Do you think the voters will buy into this again?
Oh, I was excited. Wasn't half. A bit disappointed it was only 3 points because remember, as you've just said, Mike Russell had 11. And then I cast my mind back to January 2020. The Surgeon promised us a constitutional convention. Our promise was repeated by Keith Brown, I think that was last year. It has not transpired. None of the 11 points in Mike Russell's plan have come to fruition. But what these proposals all have in common, from Nicola Sturgeon to John Swinney via Mike Russell, Keith Brown and all the rest of them, every single one of these refers to a legal referendum taking place. There's some backhanded reference to Section 30, but it always boils down to Westminster rules and playing by the rules of the Union, as opposed to playing by the rules of a union of Scottish independentistas, because Part 3 of John's plan is the same as Part 11 of Mike Russell's or Keith Brown's or the short-lived independence minister. Remember when we had Jamie Hepburn? They all said the same thing, that the route to independence was to achieve a referendum, but the way to get a referendum, apart from begging Westminster for it, was to vote SNP. So they're doomed to fail again. This is another dead end, as to, because we know support for the SNP is 30-odd%, support for the cause is in excess of 50%. So the real route map to independence is the one that John Swinney has not unfurled yet. And I say yet because one day somebody will unfurl it, but it's clearly not going to be him, and he's clearly not interested in actually attaining independence, because what he's forgotten is voter apathy and the absolutely dire distress that the SNP is in, both in terms of not bringing people out to vote for them because we won't be fooled again, and also because they've lost nearly all their activists and they've lost nearly all their income. So the SNP as a political force is on its uppers. And what it does when it's on its uppers and it's coming up to election time is it just dangles another carrot. And that's exactly what this is. If it was a real route to independence that John Swinney was offering, he'd be speaking to all political party leaders, all well-known, capable activists, and he'd speak to Civic Scotland. He'd create a constitutional convention to talk in terms of how we get to independence, but he'd also talk to all the other politicians about achieving a majority for independence in 26, both in terms of the popular vote and in the number of MSPs elected. And he's done none of that. What he's done instead is probably guaranteed an earlier or a premature end to his career as First Minister, because he's even scunnered the likes of Alec Neil, and that takes some doing for somebody that's been so loyal to the party for decades.
Yeah, absolutely. And on that, Alan, this was 2020, January the 31st, 2020.
In the first instance, we will invite Scotland's elected representatives, MSPs, MPs, the MEPs elected last year, and council leaders to come together to endorse a modern claim of right for Scotland through a new constitutional convention.
Alan, 2020, now 2025, we're no nearer that convention that the SNP promised. It's always promises that, I can exclusive you, this will happen. Nothing happens.
Yeah, well, 2020, that was just before the 2021 election. The carrot was redrawn. That was taken out again and dangled in front of everybody's faces. And because that's what the SNP do. They don't talk about independence from one election until it gets nearer the other election. Then all of a sudden, independence is back on their agenda. Believe that if you believe anything. It's nonsense. But I mean, the SNP seem to have been hit by austerity for their plans, because they went from an 11-point plan cut down to a 3-point plan. And the plan seems to be point 1, trust us. Point 2, no, really trust us. Point 3, no, really trust us. We'll tell you how we'll get to independence after the election, though. Yeah. That's all it is. There is absolutely no plan. But we know your road to independence, SNP. You've hit a roundabout, and you're just going round and round and round. Well, we're sick and tired of it. We're sick and tired of the words that you're using. We're sick and tired of you lacking a backbone. We need more spine and less spin, because the people of Scotland are sick and tired of playing to the Westminster rules, which the SNP are doing. We do not want another referendum. England have said no. So do you know what? Let's listen to them. No, we'll not accept a referendum now then. An election will be the place where we will gain our independence. If the people of Scotland vote for any independence party at 2026, and the independence movement gets a majority of votes and seats, then we will declare independence. If you've not got the backbone to do it, get out of the race, because you're not within this movement. Yes, the police may be called in. The Westminster government will probably use as much weight as possible against us, but we must stand firm, because we are elected there, not as members of a Scottish Parliament that is controlled by Westminster, but as members elected by the people of Scotland for one job and one job only, and that is the independence and liberation of our country.
Here. Independence, nothing less. Independence, nothing else. And as Eve alluded to, Phil, an old spy from your neck of the woods there in Cote de Brig, Alec Neil, was rather, he was rather scathing of Mr. Swinney's latest plan. How about you? Were you scathing, or are you happy with it?
This is, well, as the excellent independent stalwart Alex Neil has stated, same old, same old. No surprise from the bought and sold for English gold SNP. I mean, the Scotsman reports with a headline, Swinney's latest plan to achieve independence branded utterly hollow. You know, why SNP's laughing in comments, it's why SNP's laughable new independence plan's a good thing. Well, it's a good thing for the union. So John Swinney hopefully realises his government has more important things to focus on than the struggle for independence. Quote the Scotsman. What would you expect? So back to the hollow headline. A new 3-point plan to achieve independence unveiled. We've said it all along. Many, Alec Neil have said it. It's utterly hollow. He's pledged to turn up the heat on the UK government to allow a second independence referendum. Pointless. Pointless. That referendum is not the best vehicle. It's not a vehicle. They cheated last time. They'll cheat again. They'll set the rules, not the way forward. We've known it for a long time. He pledged to increase support for Scotland leaving the UK and stressed the importance of supporters of independence backing the SNP at next year's Holyrood election. Exactly the same script we've heard for 11 years under Nicola, and this cabal that continues. You traitorous liar, John. Support for independence is already over 50% without a campaign. And remember, Alex's driven campaign added 27%, almost doubled the percentage vote for independence from 28% in favour when it started to 45% in favour when it went up. Well, we'll make that 17, but huge lift. It's phenomenal progress. And the Brits, and if you think the Brits didn't tamper with the postal votes, then you can believe those numbers. But I believe they're not the genuine numbers. Since the first vote in 2014, successive UK governments have repeatedly turned down calls for a second referendum. Then you've got the statement from the Supreme Court in England that England can decide. Why are you still doing this, John? Why doing it SNP? Snouts in the trough. Continuation of the status quo. SNP are lying to the people of Scotland, still playing Westminster's games when they should be unifying with the independence movement, namely Liberate Scotland, which currently has the right idea and both supports and has the support of political organisations such as ISP, Sovereign, Indy for Indy, and the leading think tanks like Salvo, whose formal submission to the UN's Decolonisation Committee C24 has changed the landscape of the fight to free Scotland, as well as SSRG, excellent guys there, and the like. I'll finish on this. It is critical to note that while the excellent Sarah Sailors, Craig Murray, Alf Baird, and the team at Salvo will deliver the decision from the UN that Scotland is indeed a colony of England, as Craig Murray himself confirmed, this will take a couple of years. And on this show, he confirmed that we still have to fight politically in every election and continue to win these elections for independence to gain it. And if you don't believe me or Craig Murray, ask the Palestinians how the UN General Assembly demands for Israel to end its unlawful presence in occupied Palestinian territory has worked out for them. A Holocaust before our eyes. People, we must stand up for the Palestinians. I continue this. I cried at Schindler's List. I cannot remain silent and therefore complicit in the genocide in Palestine. Stop using Airbnb, Amazon, M&S. Stop buying Israeli goods. And if you want to know more on how companies make profit, companies making profit out of genocide, please watch and support the magnificent, the courageous Francesca Albanese, the UN Special Rapporteur on Humanitarian Plight in Palestine. So, and that, please, we need to do this. We speak the truth for us, and we don't want to be captured by the system that will When we put our head above the parapet, and I believe this is why the SNP have turned. They're personally threatened, and they're putting their own futures before the cause. If you're doing that, get out, and that applies to Nicola, to John, to Angus Robertson, and all the current leadership of the SNP.
Here. Lloyd, when I look at it, all I see is it's the old saying, the soft no's are coming out. We've got to convert more people. Well, opinion polls, as we've talked about on here over the last 3 years, have shown this, the soft no's don't exist now. We've got a majority, so I don't know why you would put that in them. And then, of course, it's vote SNP 1-2, which will allow unionists to win seats, and then we'll go for a Section 30. It's a load of bollocks, Lloyd, isn't it?
Yes, it is. This makes me very, very angry because John hasn't changed his playbook since the last time he was leader of the Scottish National Party. Witness this. Talking Independence, a massive tome created by John in late 2002 in the run-up to the 2003 disastrous Scottish Parliament election, disastrous for the Scottish National Party. This is John doing what he always does. When the word bubbles up that the natives are restless, then out comes the independence word. Let me just quote you something from this. Talking Independence signals the SNP's intention to engage the Scottish people in the most vibrant and exciting debate ever staged on the benefits that independence will bring to Scotland. In the run-up to the 2003 elections, the SNP will prove itself to be the most competent party of government in Scotland. We will win the trust of the Scottish people by showing that through a smarter use of the existing powers, we can build a better Scotland now. Now was 2002. This is 2025. This is less Groundhog Day than Groundhog Decades. I'm disgusted by the fact that John Swinney is the leader of the so-called national movement in this country. Over the years, I have met with the leaders of Sinn Féin, the leaders of Batasuna, the leaders of Corsica Libra, the leaders of Ears in Sardinia. I've met with the leaders of the Breton movement, Carlos de Puigdemont of the Catalan movement, and I can tell you this. John's fingernail is about as much we could imagine. I'm talking rubbish here, but the simple fact of the matter is John does not have what they have in a fingernail, an understanding of what leadership of a national movement is. The understanding that elections within the unitary state that you are a part of are merely the means by which that you deliver independence by talking up independence each and every day. And as I've said many times before, if we had said independence every single day from May 1999 until now, does anybody genuinely believe that we would not be an independent country? When at the moment, as Phil referred to, independence is above 50% without any form of campaign whatsoever since September 2014. The people are ahead of the party. The people are ahead of the game. But unfortunately, the leadership of the so-called tip of the spear of the national movement has completely and utterly forgotten what his purpose is. His purpose is to deliver the saltire between the flags of Saudi Arabia and Senegal outside the United Nations building. Anything less than that is failure. Failure. That's the reality. Now, there are those who kind of believe that what we're going through at the moment is a deliberate and manipulated withdrawal from the of the Scottish National Party from the national independence movement to the creation of a national devolution movement. Now, what I say to that is this: if you are not prepared to accept the responsibility, if you believe in independence and you're not prepared to accept the responsibility of making our country independent, then what is your purpose? What is your function? Now, again, back to the current leader and the whole institutional lack of memory that exists in the Scottish National Party. The fact that I can quote from something from 2003, 22 years ago, commissioned, written, and submitted to the party by John Swinney. When it came out, we all believed this is going to be the focus of the 2003 campaign. But the reality was, and again, back to something that Phil said, the party had lost so many members, we were down to just over 4,500 members in late 2002. The party had no money. So this booklet that was going to start this great discussion, the great discussion that was going to lead us to independence, wasn't even available to party members because the party didn't have the money to have it printed, except in tiny numbers. So we went into 2003 kidding on our own members, kidding on our own voters, and what John's trying to do is to get us back to that position in 2026. And I hate to say this, but it has to be said. The current leadership of the Scottish National Party is in the process of destroying the national movement for a generation. And if action is not taken by both people within the Scottish National Party and out with it, then the only future we have as a national movement is the utter and complete destruction of the Scottish National Party as an electoral force and the necessity for building a new one. Because currently, anyone and everyone who votes for the Scottish National Party is voting only for devolution, only for feathering the nests of the current leadership of the Scottish National Party, who are deliberately, absolutely deliberately, managing the decline of the party, hoping that it would manage the decline of the movement. But the people are smarter than that, and the independence polls tell us that. At over 50%, the people and the movement is not in decline. It is the Scottish National Party that is in decline. And the sooner it declines into and suns and sets like the sun, the happier I will be.
You're on
mute, Roddy.
I will ever a quid. So, folks, those of you who are planning to continue to vote SNP 1-2, let me invoke the wise words of Albert Einstein, a man smarter than most of us. Insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. And if you vote SNP 1-2 again, you ain't going to get different results. That's just a fact. So, independence in the constituency and in the list, not necessarily the same party. You need two parties to win. On this, we've seen the polls for, as I say, 2-3 years now. They've been consistent. The people of Scotland are ready for independence. And one of the most important things about independence is getting recognition. And this week we got a great example of it in the Western European countries. And this is for who want to see Scotland back in the EU. Now, this isn't an advert for getting into the EU. Personally, I'm against it. The point is, there's a lot of support there for Scotland. And in better figures, in France, 63 support vote for Scotland to come back into the EU. Germany, 68. Denmark, 75. Spain, 65. That particular one will stick in the craw of the unionists who try to use it every time. Italy, 64%. So international recognition is waiting an electoral event in May 2026, Eva. Everything is in line. We just need the people to get in line with us.
Everything is in line except the leadership of the biggest political party that supports independence. They're the ones that are out of step. Everybody else in the movement knows what we want. And if you travel anywhere in the world, you know perfectly well that if people think that you're British or English, they might not particularly like you. And you always have to make the distinction and point out that you're from Scotland, you're Scottish. And they start laughing and they joke to you about tartan and kilts and bagpipes and Braveheart and goodness knows all what. But it's because the Scots as a race, as a nation, are liked abroad. They think that we like good fun, we like a laugh, we like to party. Of course we do. Look at how famous the Tartan Army are for the right reasons. So internationally, yep, there's a huge amount of support for independent Scotland. Why wouldn't there be? There are so many countries in the world that have sympathy for the way that the Scots have been treated. All the former colonies of the world have sympathy for the way the Scots have been treated. The Irish have sympathy for the way that we've been treated because they were treated in a very similar fashion. So There are those around the world descended from Scots who had to leave because they were booted out, because they were cleared, or because they left for economic reasons. In recent years, as well as in decades and centuries gone by, there are people leaving Scotland right now, leaving Grangemouth, leaving Falkirk, because they don't see a future, and they're working abroad because they need to, because they can't earn that kind of money here. That's gone on since time immemorial, but it'll be on the increase if we remain thorough to the Union. Obviously, we've spoken often about Scotland being bled dry, and that's what's continuing to happen. And the international community, the eyes of the world, will be upon Scotland at next year's election if we have a united campaign for independence. You think of the boost that Scots will have internationally if you're on the phone to your cousin in Australia, or to you, Roddy, in Catalonia, or to your pal over in Canada, or New Zealand, or Dubai, and they're telling you, oh, look, I've just seen you on the news. There was a demonstration outside Bute House. There was a demonstration on the Royal Mile. There was a demonstration in George Square. They're saying that you're going to be voting for independence at this next election. This is like 2014 again. It's like another referendum. Think of the boost that that gives to everybody whose heart's been in their boots since 2014, who turn on the telly and switch it back off again, who look at the headline in the National and they toss it aside, because we cannot continue to be treated like sheep, like nutcases, as if we actually were too stupid. We understand how to get independence. The world understands how the Scots can get independence, and the people that are holding us back are those who were elected to make it happen. Remember in 2021, Nicola Sturgeon said before the election that if there was a pro-independence majority in Holyrood, certain things would happen. That pro-independence majority remains there, and these things have not happened. Remember, no ifs, no buts. And we keep going back to the same thing. We need a solution for Scotland made in and by and for Scotland, and the rest of the world, the international community, will stop, just as Winnie Ewing demanded that it would. Stop till it's Scotland. Get on.
Here. But it's all there, Alan, isn't it? We've got Europe, the European Union ready to support Scotland. The British don't have a lot of friends in the world as well, so I think there's lots of countries. The opinion polls are there, but the National Party, it's just going for devolution.
Yeah, I mean, what that poll did was more than just say they would welcome us back into Europe. It's quite clear they would welcome us as an independent nation, which is very important for the likes of Liberation.Scot, who are taking our case to the United Nations, because that's the European ones. I'll guarantee that every single other nation that was decolonised by the British will be on our side as well, because they have experienced what we are going through now. The difference is their people knew they were colonised. Our people still in that colonised mentality of they know better. But this is a good poll for us. And I mean, the world knows what Scots are like. And like Eva said, football has done a lot for us. Because not only the Tartan Army, remember back in 86, 87, Dundee United went through to the UEFA Cup finals. Their fans were tremendous. And they actually got awarded the first ever Fair Play Award from FIFA, because the crowds of every team that they beat applauded them. They thought they were tremendous because they were there. While England were being banned from stadiums, we were being welcomed with open arms, because people know that we are a peaceful nation. We enjoy ourselves. We certainly enjoy ourselves. Phil's prime example of that one. But we'll go around the world and welcomed everywhere. I mean, you know yourself when people in another country say, "Oh, you're British," and you say, "No, I'm Scottish." Their attitude totally changes with you. They're more welcoming because they know that you are a peaceful person and you're not there to cause any trouble. You welcome different cultures. And that's what makes Scotland so rich abroad. People love the Scots. And what we have to do first, though, because we cannot be recognised as an independent state until we vote to become an independent state. And people have got to remember the SNP cannot get you independence. Alapa cannot get you independence. Even Liberate Scotland cannot get you independence. But we can be the tool used to push it through, because only the people of Scotland can declare independence by voting for it. And that means not voting for devolutionists, not voting for spineless MSPs. That means voting for people with a spine, the courage of their convictions, who are there to represent you, not a party, not the system, but to liberate our country.
Yeah, here. Well said, sir. Well said. The most, it's just not only is independence in the way, but all the things that are aligning, Phil. For example, the Labour Party, in the last week, Keir Starmer has suspended more people in a week than Tony Blair did in 11 years or something like that. And here's this latest one. They suspended 4, one of them being in Scotland, Brian Leishman. Jeremy Corbyn's set up a party, so the unions are going to be cutting their throats in 26. They're going to be fighting among themselves. But this is our opportunity. So England's discomfort is Scotland's opportunity.
Absolutely, and we've said it all along. As we say, if your enemies, as Napoleon taught us, if your enemy's making a mistake, don't interrupt them. But more importantly, intervene to your advantage at the right time. And that's about strategy, planning, observation, and being getting the right feedback from the battlefield, which is the battlefield for Scottish independence. And the SNP are blind to this. The doofuses and the collection of amateurs, sycophants, and complete chancers that currently run the key departments within the SNP. I mean, this is a conversation I had with Lloyd before. When Kevin Pringle was in charge of aspects of the SNP were formidable. Now they're a joke. They're just an empty vessel. And that's the problem. We are not in a place to take advantage of this magnificent opportunity, because the SNP will continue with SNP 1 and 2 and continue to hold on to their snouts in the trough. So Keir Starmer, and this is obviously very close to Eva's heart, because she knows one of these people very well. So Keir Starmer has suspended 4 Labour MPs for repeated breaches of the party discipline, right? Brian Leishman, Chris Hinchcliffe, Neil Duncan-Jordan and Rachel Maskell were suspended from the Parliamentary Labour Party. That means they've had the whip removed and will sit as independent MPs. We applaud you all. Why? Because all 4 voted against the government's welfare reforms earlier this month, among 47 party MPs to rebel. Now, and I'm getting this from Sky News, they understand that this isn't the only reason why these 4 were got rid of. And you would understand that. If 47 rebelled, why just these 4? Well, Brian Leishman is well known to Eva, and basically these 4 were primarily the leaders or ringleaders of the criticism of the Labour government. So the MP for Alwyn Grangemouth, he was elected in last year's general election, as we know all too well. Well, the constituency was contested for the first time that year. It would have been an SNP seat ordinarily. Now, Eva will speak well to the fact that this guy, rightly or wrongly, said he'll fight and the Labour Party will fight to keep Grangemouth alive. Lied. Whether it was intentional or otherwise, this guy does not represent what is good for the people of Alwyn Grangemouth. But he's also a member of the Socialist Campaign Group inside Labour and was previously elected to Perth and Ross Council in 2022. He's regularly voted against the government and criticised for his party for not doing enough to save Grangemouth, which is fair enough. But he says he's a proud Labour member and remain committed to the party. The notional party that was the Labour Party of the ragged-trousered philanthropist, in my view. So this guy, for me, what we see here is individuals within fighting against the powers that be. We see very clearly the main parties of the UK, USA, Germany, France, and the EU itself, including all the Western-driven institutions we rely upon to represent us in fairness and putting forward their values, they're corrupted by the billionaire corporations through lobbyists as they use Ukraine against Russia, Israel against the whole Middle East, and are eyeing up to a team to take on China. They will destroy socialism within that what was the Labour Party, which is why Jeremy Corbyn will slice apart the Labour vote in 2026 and why we should be jumping in to take control of this. It's a golden opportunity, and John Swinney and the other shysters in charge of the SNP are not paying attention and do not care.
You're absolutely right, Phil. I mean, maybe Mr. Leishman will be a Corbyn target for this new. No, the more they fight among themselves, the better. But the thing is, Lloyd, when they set up the Holyrood in the first place, the Brits put in place the famous D'Hondt system. And the idea behind it was, I mean, without a shadow of a doubt, that no one party was to win. Even when Labour was so dominant in those days, they were clever enough, the Brits, because whatever, folks, the Brits are not stupid. You don't hold the biggest empire the world's ever seen by being stupid. They might be bastards, but they're not stupid. But they put in place so that it would take two parties on every occasion, barring a fluke, as happened in 2011. It would always take two parties to form a majority. It's still the case. It's still the same voting system. And the SNP cannot do it on its own.
No, they can't. But, anyone who examined that system properly, remembering also, this is not pure D'Hondt. It's D'Hondt, but it's manipulated in a particular way, as you just described, Roddy. But the purpose of it was to give the Unionist parties control in Holyrood, but also to give the Unionist parties at Westminster the ability to leverage the Unionist parties at Holyrood. Because, for instance, in the first Parliament in which I served, Donald Dewar had a majority, a very, very slim majority, but he had a majority. There was no requirement for him to bring the Liberals into his government, but what he saw it as was copper bottoming the Union within the Parliament. So for a few years, the Lib Dems got scootled about in ministerial cars. They never really came up with anything. They're not really a political party in actual fact. But what it did was it allowed the Westminster Liberal leader to lean on the Liberal leader in Holyrood, and vice versa. And same with the Labour Party. It tied us into a system that was linked inextricably with Westminster, until along came Alex Salmond and it all changed. But, you got to look at the period of time before that. The SNP went from 35 members in the first Parliament down to 28 in the second, and then further down in the next Parliament until John was got rid of. Alec came back, and the focus was on delivering good governance. Now, the situation we find ourselves in now is we've had at least 10 years of very, very poor governance. No bridges built, not a mile of motorway, not a mile of road, hardly any houses built, no industrial strategy, hence the closure of Grangemouth, the closure of Alexander Dennis, and numerous other things. We are not in a position at the moment whereby the Scottish National Party can confidently say to the people of this country, we are better than the others. Now, that's a ridiculous situation to have yourself in, when in actual fact, the current government of the United Kingdom is polling at a lower level than any government has in many a long year. But again, we're back to the same situation of dishonesty from the SNP. The SNP, if it genuinely believed in independence, then it would be working with that 15 to 17% of the population who want independence but will not vote for the Scottish National Party. Unfortunately, though, because of the lies that the party has told itself in relation to Alex Salmond and the great governance we had when he was the leader of the party on the run-up to 2014 and the referendum, because they will not tell the truth to themselves about these insane issues of science denial, which are being played out in an employment tribunal in Dundee at this very time, these people who are at the top of the Scottish National Party would have to turn around and say to the country, mea culpa, we got it wrong. And unfortunately, because these are mediocre individuals, very mediocre individuals, there is no chance that they will admit to this, because to admit to this would be to admit their own stupidity. And stupid people never admit to their own stupidity. So we find ourselves in this terrible situation where, at least after the disaster that was the 2003 election, when Swinney was the leader of the Scottish National Party, we had the White Knight in Alex Salmond able to come over the hill and save the country and build a huge big bridge across the Forth, amongst many other things subsequently. At the moment, who's coming charging over the hill on a horse? Stephen Flynn? Mary McAllen? Jenny Gilruth? We're not even talking bargain basement here. We're talking about clearance items. You know, the idea that we would put our country into the hands of those individuals that I just named is absolutely extraordinary. And unfortunately, because the SNP is so bereft of intellect, so bereft of ideas, and so completely and utterly thrilled to the British political system, there is no way out here unless overnight the angel arrives in the ears and the minds of the leadership of the Scottish National Party and points out to them that the way to nirvana, the way to the promised land, is actually to talk to the people who criticise you. Because the country will benefit from that. But unfortunately, we have people who have such toty, to use a phrase of my nana's, toty heads and toty minds, they will not consider doing that. Now, to me, that in the end is the ultimate betrayal of the people of this country. People are crying out for change, and the change they want is for Scotland to be an independent country with total control over its own economy and all its natural resources. That's what people want. But if your political party that's supposed to deliver those things will not even countenance the idea of discussing with people who have been critical of them previously, then we're trapped. We're trapped in a blind alley, going nowhere except the world of managed decline. And for me, John Swinney, Angus Robertson, Kate Forbes, and the rest of them are quite happy with the managed decline. But unfortunately, the concomitant to the managed decline of the Scottish National Party is the decline in living standards and life opportunities for the people of our country. And that is not acceptable.
It is not, absolutely not. And as Eva, as Lloyd alluded to, there's a when we've talked about it many times on this podcast, there's a 20-25% gap between those in favour of independence and those that support the SNP, and there's a reason for that. And this week it was highlighted, and this is one of the biggest problems that they've got, and that is the great Sandie Peggie, who's a woman we should all doff our hat to, who was cleared this week of misconduct allegations made against her. And the farce that is playing out in this tribunal, Eva, is all at the doorstep and belongs firmly and absolutely undeniably with the Scottish National Party. And this is why there's such a huge gap, or one of the main reasons why there's such a huge gap between support for independence and support for the SNP.
It's because the leadership of the SNP since Sturgeon took over has been completely and utterly out of touch with the people of Scotland, with their beliefs, with their hopes, and also with their fears. You know, I was going to joke, but it's no laughing matter. I could go round Kelty, Cowdenbeath, Lochgelly, Kirkcaldy, Cardenden, Kennoway, and show people a photo of the famous doctor who's featuring in that tribunal and ask them, is this person male or female? And I can guarantee you that every single person that I stop in the high street, all these villages and towns, is going to look at me as if I've got horns growing out my head, because people are nae daft. So what you've got is a set of circumstances where middle-class women, mainly, are in essence bullying working-class women, mainly, into accepting an utter and complete falsehood to the detriment of the women that deserve, are legally entitled to, have always, since the Equality Act and since workplace regulations, etc., been entitled to single-sex spaces and services. You know, the Supreme Court did not rewrite the law. The Supreme Court reaffirmed what the law is and has been for decades. So Sturgeon's guidance that she lorded it over, that she was responsible for, to hospitals, to schools, to prisons, you name it, that guidance has been unlawful since it was ever invented. I mean, we heard the other day in the evidence of the tribunal that there was a policy that had a soft launch to see what people thought about it. I've rarely read or heard such guff in my life. Mm-hmm. And what we've got at the helm is Neil Gray. Over-promoted, overpaid, underachieving, underexperienced, underqualified Cabinet Secretary for Health, who clearly does not have the cojones enabling him to pick up the phone to NHS Fife and demand that every member of the board and the chief executive plant their backside on the seats in his office so that they can all tender their immediate resignation.
Yeah.
That's what ought to be happening. But instead of that, he's making a statement saying he's foursquare behind them. They've got his full confidence. John Swinney's doing the same. That's when they're able to comment, because they say they can't comment because it's an ongoing case, which again is complete guff. The NHS Central Legal Office is paying for this. They're sending in the lawyers. You've got lawyers that are acting on behalf of the NHS and the doctor, and innumerable lawyers on Twitter worldwide commenting on how that looks awfully like a conflict of interest. So you would wonder, when the advocate or the barrister or whoever she is for the NHS is examining or cross-examining a witness, whose case is she creating? Is it the doctor's case or is it the case for the NHS? You could drive a coach and horses through this entire performance. It shames Scotland. It shames Scotland on the world stage. And it shames Scotland in the eyes of all lawyers who understand a wee bit about the law, what equality is, and what the difference is between a man and a woman, and why it is that a woman is perfectly, absolutely, totally entitled to object to a man being in a woman's changing room. The fact that we're having this conversation at all is testament to the absolute abject misery that Sturgeon and people like her imposed on folk that didn't have the power to fight back. Well, Sandie Peggie, there are millions of women in Scotland that owe you an enormous debt of gratitude and will forevermore.
Sometimes, Alan, a cartoon or humour can sum it up. And this one, I've got it off the internet. I just want that you take your clothes off, Sandie, in front of me. I mean, that's really what we're talking about here. And this is what this was all about. It's scandalous. It's absolutely scandalous.
It's perversion. I mean, there's no other reason for a man to go into a female bathroom without being a pervert. It is as simple as that. But I mean, this is the biggest problem we've got, is we no longer have a parliament or politics in this country. We have a stage that is the longest running pantomime ever in existence. I mean, you take, for example, the Labour MPs that are being suspended for voting against the government. I mean, what's the punishment of that? You lose your whip. Now, Phil, Lloyd, Eva, and myself have all been elected members. And trust me, not having to turn up to group meetings is not a punishment. Honest to God, that was lovely if you didn't have to go to one of these meetings. But then you come on to the Sandie Peggie situation. Perhaps if these people didn't get the get-out clause of, I am just following orders with other people's money, perhaps if they took actions which they were financially liable for themselves, things would be quite different. And that is maybe something that we should be looking at very closely, because I am sick and tired of civil servants taking decisions that are costing the poorest in this society who do not agree with their decisions to pay for it. Because every single court action, every time they're sued, it's not money coming out of their pockets. It's money coming out of our pockets. It's money coming out of our services that are running down our services. So perhaps it's time now to concentrate people's minds. The actions that you take will have personal consequences against you, because they should not be protected.
I agree. I mean, last I heard there during the week, the first estimate was £250,000 the NHS 5 is spent in this case. Now, I don't know how many nurses that would be, extra nurses, or how many extra wheelchairs, or how many extra hip replacement operations. That's where the money should be getting spent, not in bloody lawyers, Phil, question this nonsense. And again, I go back to your friend there. You notice this, the pension. They put a note at the end, which was really ridiculous. NH5's latest statement is quite remarkable, which the contents that concern me most. They have now cast doubt upon the assurances they gave me. This is from the Information Commissioner, I should have heard it, regarding compliance with my decision notice. I will investigate further, and if the authority has not indeed fully complied with my decision, then I may report the matter to the Court of Session as a contempt of court. Now, not only are they ignoring the Quality Act and trying to, run fast and loose with that, the Information Commissioner has been demanding that they release certain documents, and they're just ignoring. It is really quite scandalous. They should be fired, this board.
Yeah, this it's just appalling. It's the woke infestation, and we feel duty bound to reiterate our position that indeed those who are going through transition, we support. But this is not about that. This is about the allocation or application of bad policy upon all of us with negative effects for most of us, i.e. all women and girls. That's the problem here. And what we've got, of course, she's completely cleared of gross misconduct allegations. Let's not forget that. Now, and NHS Fife themselves cleared the nurse. This is a very high-profile tribunal case. She's completely cleared of all disciplinary charges. She was being investigated by the health board after Dr. Beth Upton, a trans woman doctor, a man, accused her of a hate incident. Let's not forget what this is about. And that cartoon nailed it. He complained that she wouldn't get undressed when he was there. And that, the patient safety breaches following a confrontation in a changing room at the Victoria Hospital in Kirkcaldy. And news of this outcome of the internal investigation just came hours before Miss Peggie's employment tribunal against the health board, and Dr. Upton is due to resume. This is appalling. That they really need their arses felt. And they really need sorted out and removed. It's up, and I'll leave it. Eva's nailed it. Everybody knows what should happen here sensibly. And John Swinney and the SNP and the Wokarate, I believe have been forced to do this. I think they're bought and sold by the establishment to detract from the focus the SNP should have, which was independence. This is deflection. This allows the SNP to serve their masters, which is the British government, and create a furore that not only divides the independence movement, ridicules the independence movement, stifles the independence movement, and splits the independence movement. This is deliberate. They know this, they can see this, and they are to be held accountable. And that means don't vote SNP. We'll come up with something, but they do not deserve to represent us, because you may have noticed they do not.
You're on mute, Roddy.
I know, I'm just remembering I'm on quids everywhere here. Quids. This is what surprises me, Lloyd. We've got this gap that we've talked about between the support for Indie, support for SNP. Now, you've been there, seen it, done it, worn the T-shirt. Someone should get together. I mean, this is a very small minority of people. Why would you keep going with someone that's harming you like that? Because there's not an upside to it. I don't see the upside to a political party of supporting this. There's only a downside at the ballot box. What am I missing?
I think what we're all missing, Roddy, is this. The period after Alec Salmond resigned and Nicola Sturgeon became the first minister and leader of the Scottish National Party, she imported an ideology which she picked up from Hillary Clinton, an ideology that had been communicated to Miss Ardern, who was the Prime Minister of New Zealand, Justin Trudeau in Canada, and you'll find that both those countries, and Leo Varadkar in the Republic of Ireland as well, where they imported this gender, this I can't remember exactly what it's called, but the gender identity theory, which was being driven in America by the big pharmaceutical companies, because it's a great way to make money by keeping people on drugs for the whole of their life. Now, once she had inculcated that into the Scottish National Party and surrounded herself with people who were prepared to go along with that ideology, it's been going on for 11, 12 years now. All of these people who are in the leadership of the Scottish National Party put aside everything they'd learned at school in biology classes, put aside all the things that they'd witnessed with their eyes over their years on this planet. And now that it is discredited, they cannot bring themselves to admitting their own folly, because that would implicate Nicola Sturgeon, who clearly has... she must have some fat black book on those that were around her, but bigger and worse than that. And this is what we're seeing in the employment tribunal. That ideology was forced through by third sector organisations, by public bodies like the police, the fire service, the NHS, and in education as well, hence the fact we've got so many gender-neutral toilets against the law in all our schools across the country. Now, all of this happened because they operated a form of clientele government. This was the basis upon which Nicola Sturgeon and the SNP ruled in cohort with the British civil service. What it did was it created, by handing out money to third sector structures and into the voluntary sector and into the public bodies, it created a loyal group of people. And that loyalty was based on the fallacy that men can become women and women can become men. Now, the only unique identity for a trans woman is that they're a man. And the only unique identity of a trans man is that they are a woman. Now, that's just the reality of it. Now, when you've convinced a whole load, and Eva made reference to this, and it's absolutely true. When you convince the mediocre middle class that there is a new ideology that separates them out from the rest, that makes them unique and special, they will go along with that if you pay them 45, 55, 65,000 pounds a year, as we discovered the equality, diversity and inclusion person at NHS Fife was paid. Oh. Now, that buys loyalty. That is clientelism government. It's exactly what has happened in other countries. The names of the leaders I'd rather not use at this particular stage. But if you want to control the country that you run, then control the people who control the little people. And that's exactly what Nicola Sturgeon did. So we're now in a situation where, asked directly, both the Health Secretary and the First Minister, did they have confidence in the board and the executive of NHS Fife? Both said yes. Why did they say yes? Because if they say no, they are effectively admitting that they have no confidence in their own ideas, because the ideas propagated by NHS Fife and imposed by NHS Fife on its workforce are exactly the ideas that clientele government, remember that Mr. Swinney was the Deputy First Minister when all of this was happening, he is equally as culpable for the gender madness that is wreaking havoc across our education system, across our health system, our police service, who this morning had to make an announcement that Police Scotland will not be on the Pride March at Glasgow today because of a High Court judgment against Northumbria Police in an English court just the other day. And there is much gnashing of teeth and much anger amongst all the police forces over this. It's an absurdity. But the worst of this is, even if the Scottish National Party were to turn round tomorrow and John Swinney were to call a press conference and say, we have been mistaken for 12 years. For 12 years, we have been inculcating the ideas brought to our shores courtesy of Hillary Clinton, and we got it all wrong. They can't do that because, as I said earlier, people of small minds will never admit to their own mistakes, most especially something as quite colossal as the denial of biological reality.
Yeah, it is a farce. And it's amazing that every court case, every time this gets tested in the court, the Traz lose, the woke loses. Because, when the law and reality comes up, they lose every time. But the noise and the costs and everything they put just terrible. Earlier, even I put up a picture of Einstein with these famous phrases, repeating the same things over and over again and expecting a different outcome as the sign of insanity. Now, our Rachel in accounts has decided, and our Craig Murray put this great thing up, to reduce red tape for the City of London and the finance sector so that they're not held back. This sounds familiar, Eva. I think we've been down this road before. And at the same time this week, they're talking about now lending over 4.5 times income for the first-time home buyers to get them into the market. I smell another property bubble coming along, Eva. Have they not learned their lesson?
Any minute now, we're going to hear from Gordon Brown. He'll have a lot to say about this, won't he? This is unbelievable, except entirely believable. They've run out of roads, so they'll just repeat the same old mistakes. And of course, what will happen? People that can't afford it will borrow too much, they'll default on their mortgages and they'll be repossessed. And when they're repossessed, they'll be bought up by wealthy landlords and corporate interests to be rented out to those tenants who've just been evicted for no paying their mortgage. And the rent will be twice as much as what their monthly mortgage payment would have been. You've seen it all so many times before. Yet another reason for Scotland getting the hell out of this godforsaken union at a rate of knots. You drive around Scotland and you can see all over the place derelict hotels, abandoned houses, huge swathes of land that should be built on in the middle of towns and villages, former industrial land, brownfield land, gap sites, you name it. We're bursting with land that needs built on. We've got a desperate need of housing. So what we should be doing is having a national house building corporation and building houses for people to rent at a reasonable price. I've said before, we could even build them. We would. We've got that much of it. We could do this very quickly. We could set up a national house building corporation practically overnight. If John Swinney phoned Alec Neil, the nuts and bolts would be in place this time next week. The borrowing powers would be available. This could be done. Just as we could have a national energy company. There are so many things that we could do if we had imaginative government. And it doesn't all have to wait for independence. Some of it can happen right now and reinstate the competent government that we had for so long under Alec. We didn't know what we had until it was gone, quite frankly. And now that it's gone, you look around you, whether it's gender identity, gender ideology, and the division that has created within our movement. But we can recover from that. We can recover from that with honesty and integrity and common sense. And if we had politicians who listened to what the people want and actually started to deliver it again, because in the areas where politicians do listen, Scottish politics does succeed. We've got the ability, we've got the resources, we've got the people power to be not just a wealthy country, but a happy country, a country where nobody sleeps rough, a country where nobody has to think about borrowing from their pension fund to pay for a knee replacement or a hip replacement to make them a bit happier in later life. A country where children are languishing on a waiting list for a psychologist for 2.5 years. A country where any sort of physical or mental or emotional assessment that's needed done is done when you need it to be done, not 6 months or a year or a couple of years later. We don't need to live like this. And you'll notice the people that are living like this, that are languishing, whether it's in poor health or financial difficulty, the people that are suffering there are the working class, not the middle class, not the upper class, not the MSPs, not the lanyard class. They're all doing very well, thanks very much. The people that are doing without and the people that need to get registered to vote, who need to have something to vote for, are the working class of Scotland, the homeless, the unemployed, the ill, the elderly, the young, the middle-aged, the working poor, the single men that are living off of food banks. These are the folk that we, as Liberate Scotland, as Indie for Indie, need to liberate. We need to stand up for them, and we need to give them the optimism to know that voting in the election next year can deliver independence and give tangible hope, not more dangled bloody carrots.
Here. I mean, Rachel and the council had the cheek to talk about trickle-down economics. If the city got let loose, that the wealth would trickle down to those at the bottom. I mean, it's just quite incredible.
Well, I'm beginning to wonder whether their cabinet meetings have a big Ouija board in front of it, and they start bringing the spirit of Thatcher back, just for some advice, because it's like a Thatcher flipping tribute act that they're playing. That was failed then, and it'll fail again now. There's only one way to make the economy work, and that is put money in the pockets of those who spend it. Those are the poorest. Yet at this present time, what we have is members of the Department of Works and Pensions demanding bank statements from people on universal credits, phoning them up, asking them, what did you buy from PayPal, through PayPal? How much money are you spending on your food? Why are you buying that food? And they're criticising people, and their excuse is because it is public funds. Well, guess what? MSPs are paid through public funds. MPs are paid through public funds. The royal family are paid through public funds. The police, the health board, the social work department, every other civil servant are paid through taxation, our money. So will we now phone up every single person who works for the government and ask them what they're spending their money on? No, because it's not right. And it is not right to attack the poor and demand to know what they're spending their money on. It is their money. They're entitled to it. And they're entitled to buy the food they want. They're entitled to buy the clothes that they want. And most of them are online to get the cheapest stuff they possibly can. So keep your bloody noses out of other people's business and just do the job that you're paid to do. I mean, sorry about that rant, but...
No, we like the wee rants, Alan. That's why you're here. Cool. I mean,
but the other thing too on this one is they say that they're removing red tape. That's not what they're doing. They're removing the safety mechanisms for the consumers. Exactly. Yeah. They are screwing us over right, left, and centre. And even the plans now for the TV licence, they're talking about making that into the council tax. So as everybody will have to pay it. It's not a case of we don't watch BBC now, the propaganda unit. You have to pay it because it's going to be part of your council tax. Now I've got to say, Edwin was born, brought up, and still live in a scheme in Dundee that is put on the list of 10th most deprived areas of the so-called United Kingdom. I do not have to put on the TV, watch BBC One for EastEnders. I live across the road from shops. I open my curtains and I see it every single day. So I do not have to pay for a TV licence to get my entertainment.
Phil, the fact is, if we get rid of the red tape, or however you want to call it, get rid of the safety net, as Alan quite rightly says, bankers are going to make more profits, the spivs are going to make more profits. And as Alan says, they ain't going to spend that in the street. That's going to Panama or Jersey or Guernsey or Gibraltar. That ain't going into the economy.
No, and this really needs to be understood. We all understand in this programme how this works. But we thought it was austerity and steroids before. With this austerity, notice, be it Tory or Labour, has just been accelerated yet again. Even the Financial Times reports Rachel Reeves' order to audit 130 regulators, which cover areas including, wait for it, finance, fisheries, doctors and drinking water. So Scotland is, in particular, has been targeted again, and ministers will be told to look at whether some watchdogs can be scrapped, not constrained or curtailed, scrapped. So now Labour seek to remove more checks and balances on corporate greed, and it's a full audit. Ministers will do a full audit of Britain's 130 or so regulators to ensure they're working to boost growth. To boost growth, that's not That's not their objective. They're there to protect the people from the rapacious nature of the corporate world. It's your government job to promote growth. So they've written to 17 of the most powerful regulators on Christmas Eve, demanding to know what they were doing to promote growth. This has been coming for some time. So basically, what we now face is, and this really needs to be understood. This is the important part that Alan mentioned. A quick reminder why this is as important and how the system really works. And it's why the sellout governments in the UK, including the SNP, are aiding and abetting the theft of the resources of the people by the corporations. It's a wake-up call for all those naive who come into politics or receive politics as honest and straightforward. Many politicians or would-be politicians come into politics with good ideas, with good intentions, expecting to change the system from within. Even many of the colleagues I still like and respect in the SNP feel this way. But watch those who speak in the first person. I did this. I won that. I will do this. Their heads are turned. We did this. We will do that. This is where we stand. And no line. No one will cross it. That's what we need to hear. What most folk don't understand is that once you get in a position of power, or even on the chosen track for power, because a lot of these people are placed, almost always chosen by others, you will be visited by the men in suits who will tell you how it really works. The men in suits represent the billionaires, the corporations, big pharma, oil and gas, hedge funds, investment companies like BlackRock, who now control Germany. As one of their own, Friedrich Merz, was the chairman of BlackRock Germany and is now the new chancellor. Friedrich represents the Christian Democratic Union Party, a right-wing party. It's worth noting that the formal name of the Nazi party in Germany was the National Socialist German Workers' Party. What's in a name, folks? What's in a name?
Yeah. And that happy note to you, Lloyd. Did you think in your life again you would hear about trickle-down economics?
So long as we stay in the United Kingdom, yes, because that's this is the theory that's dominated at Westminster since the 1930s, and it's fake, entirely fake, and everybody knows it. I mean, but for me, we really need to get back to what is the purpose and function of independence? Why do we need to get away from Westminster and the trickle-down economics and the various other authoritarian guff that we have to put up with via from the banks of the Thames? It's simple, and Eva alluded to it. We've got a great project ahead of us, rebuilding or building our country in the manner in which our people want it. So that if emergency workers happen to be working in Caithness and Sutherland, then there's homes for them, there's schools for their children. The fact that we would emphasise on those services that provide for the people, that those are the things we wish to invest in. So this week, when we're talking about tunnels to Orkney and tunnels in Shetland and tunnels in the Western Isles, these are the things we should be thinking about. Whether we should do them or not, that's another matter. But that's about ambition. The future for our country should be about our ambitions. And our ambitions are that everyone, as Eva said, we live in a happy country. But we can only live in a happy country if you create the structures which people want, which people will be excited by, and will make people wish to stay here. And that means you don't let your bus company close down, because oddly enough, in the future, you're going to need buses. You don't let your ship and boat yards close down, because funnily enough, in the future, you're going to need ships and boats. All of these things are the basis of an economy, a healthy, happy economy, a house building project which would be ongoing over generations. So it would include apprenticeships. It would include forward planning for where there is likely to be demographic change. All of these things are about that exciting thing of building and developing a country. And why? Could somebody please explain to me? Why would anyone who wants to go into politics in Scotland not want to take part in that great plan? Take part in that, positive approach to the future? Who would not want to take the responsibility for creating a country whereby you know that your grandchildren are actually going to be looked after from cradle to grave? Who wouldn't want to be part of a project that creates a country that sees itself as a neutral, peacekeeping country in the world, rather than dependent on the so-called trickle-down economics of an arms manufacturing country? We don't need any of this. There's plenty to be done. We've got miles and miles of road that need to be built. There's potholes all over the place. We've got pavements that need sorted out. There's grannies' gardens need their flowers, their hedges, and their grass trimmed. There's no shortage of stuff to be done, but it should be stuff which is about improving the lives of the people. And I don't mean in a purely financial manner. The environment we have, and the environment is not about net zero. The environment's about decent pavements, nice gardens, the grass cut. It's about these things that make people feel like they are treasured in some way by their government. Yeah. If you go to most of the housing schemes in this country, and I'm sure Alan will back me up in this, they are the last places that our councils send out the gardening workers. They're the last places that get the maintenance. They're the last places that get painted. They're the last places where, when the lights go, they're the last places for somebody to turn up in a cherry picker and replace the light. These are the things that could be done each and every day, which would make people feel like they are not that they're worthy, but that they are cared for, and that we are all in something together. The only way we can do that, and get people back to thinking that they have something in common with their fellow countrymen, is with independence. And unfortunately, right at the end of the programme, got to say it again, that independence is not coming in 2026 unless there is a coup within the SNP that makes them suddenly realise, or a light descends upon them. It makes them realise that each and every day that we don't set off on this national campaign to rebuild our country is a day lost, and it's a chance lost, and it's a future lost. Now, the likelihood of them turning around and saying, yes, let's all work together. The likelihood of them saying, yes, let's make this a plebiscite election, negligible, absolutely negligible. But we and the people who, that 15 to 17% who support independence but don't support the SNP, need to make our voices heard, to force them into the corner where that managed decline is not something that the people of this country want anymore. The SNP's managed decline of itself and of the national movement has to cease. And it has to cease in the run-up to 2026 by people of good mind and people of good intention gathering together to deliver that future that our country deserves.
Hear, hear. And another thing, as an independent country, you wouldn't do is you wouldn't close your refinery. You would expand it and make it much better, and your steelworks to build the ships, to build the cars, to build everything. So, as I say, folks, we're going on holiday, but we will still be doing things. And remember, if we want to have independence, I've just got to say this, that, we've got to work together. And the way to do that, folks, liberate Scotland. Liberate Scotland needs your support. Until we see you, which will be in a couple of weeks, because it's Grand Wayne's time now, to you and yours, take care.
Through a Scottish Prism, the programme that is unapologetically pro-Scottish independence and anti-Westminster rule. Everything we say here is viewed through a Scottish prism. Brought to you by Barhead Boy.